In this video, I'm going to be explaining the different stages of clay and ceramics. So first we have a block of clay. We're going to kind of work from wet to dry and then the different stages after your clay's been fired. So if we want to say the most wet clay, that would actually be slip. And slip is clay that's mixed with water until it forms kind of like a creamy consistency. So it's really mucky and slimy, but it's what holds things together when you want to attach different pieces of clay together. You can't really build with slip, but you can do things like slip casting, where you pour slip into a mold and then it hardens into the shape of the mold. And you can also use colored slip to decorate your clay later in the process. So the most wet type of clay is slip. So the stage of clay that we're going to work with the most when we're creating things with ceramics is plastic. So plastic is wet clay that's brand new, it's moist, it's soft, it's easily molded. So that'd be like clay that's right out of a bag, it's brand new, or clay that you've just reworked. So it's nice and soft. I can cut off a piece and kind of mold it or shape it however I want. Now each stage has its pros and cons, so sometimes plastic clay can't really hold its own weight. So I'm going to roll out a little slab of clay here. Okay, so I have a slab of clay here, and when your clay is plastic, it's going to be very flexible. So it's going to kind of wobble a lot, which has benefits, but it also has some problems. So if you want to curve it into a shape or fold it, bend it, work with that, it's going to work really, really well at this stage. However, if you want it to stay very straight up and down and stiff and hold its shape, it's not really going to do that, because if I pick it up, it's just going to flop. So that is when the next stage of clay comes in handy, and that is leather hard. I've let my clay sit out for about 15 minutes, and I kind of had a fan sitting on it as well. Now, clay dries differently depending on the temperature and the humidity, and it is very humid today, so it is not wanting to dry. But right now, I would say my clay is at about a soft leather hard phase, and this is a really great phase to work with because your clay can kind of hold its shape. It's still a little bit flexible, but it's not going to flop around like brand new plastic clay will. So this is a great time for you to maybe attach pieces together. Maybe you're building a box or some other sort of structure. This is a great time to work from it. So I'm going to let this dry just a little bit more, and then I'll show you kind of what stiff leather hard looks like. Alright, so at the stiff leather hard stage, it's really going to hold its shape and not going to be very floppy. That's because your clay is starting to get dry. Now this is an ideal time to carve into your clay. You can still add stuff to it, it's just going to be a little more challenging. You're going to need to score and slip a lot better. You may even need to add like a coil of soft clay into the seams to help smooth it, because it's going to be really hard to smear the seams together without one of those coils there, just because the clay, especially around the edges, is starting to get very dry. One last important thing to note with leather hard clay is that it's not flexible. It's not going to bend. If you try to bend your clay when it's stiff leather hard, it's going to break. So usually around this stage is when you start to kind of finish up what you're working on, and you can leave it out to dry. And that's going to leave us with the final stage of clay, which is bone dry. All right, so I have set this out to dry, and I had a fan on it for a while so to speed it up a bit. But now you can see the clay is bone dry. You may notice that it's a different color. It's kind of got this sort of chalky look to it, and that's because all of the moisture is gone from the clay. So it feels about room temperature, Normally when clay is drying, it feels cool to the touch because you can feel the moisture evaporating out of it. When your clay is bone dry, it's at its most fragile. You want to try and keep your hands off as much as possible. Try not to touch it because it'll break really easily. If you drop it, it will break, right? So you want to try and leave it alone. And it's at this stage where you can put your clay into the kiln and fire it. So all of the stages before this, all the clay that has not been fired, we call that greenware. So greenware is any stage of clay before it's fired. After we take the clay out of the kiln for the first firing, then we have bisqueware. So you can see how the color is changed from bone dry clay to bisqueware. It's pretty drastic. And that's because clay undergoes a chemical change when it's fired. So bisqueware is very strong. So if I drop it, it's not going to break. It's pretty strong, it's durable, and at this point we can start decorating. So with bisqueware, we can paint it, we can stain it, we can use any sort of surface decoration we want to. Or if you want it to be functional, you can add glaze to it. So think of your coffee cups or plates or cups, that sort of glass coating over the top of it is called glaze. So we'll paint that on and fire it a second time, which creates this sort of glossy coating over the top of it. And that's going to make it waterproof and able to be functional. So those are all of the stages of clay from wet to dry. So there's slip, plastic, leather hard, bone dry, bisqueware, and glazeware. Thanks for watching.